And now we come to the final product in the bundle, the 15Dorrough or 15Dorrough meter package. 15Dorrough meters are very well known in the hardware world, and these software versions model them exactly. Now what's great about 15Dorrough meters in general is that they have an ability to show you really fast peaks and yet average kind of RMS style energy at exactly the same time on the same meter. So you can see that here. I'll just play a little bit of this track. So we've got the peaks up here, and you can see there's that sort of gap between them and where they meet this part of the meter here, which is showing you the average. So that makes these meters very useful in the field, very easy to look at quickly and get a real picture of what's going on in terms of stray peaks that might be jumping out, but also just the average behavior of the program to make sure it's sitting where you want it to be. So let's have a little poke around the plugin now and just explain what all the options are, because it's very configurable. So starting up here, we've actually got 3 shapes for the plugin to mimic some of the hardware choices that are out there, but also just to capitalize on what screen real estate you've got available. So as you can see at the moment, I've got it set horizontally, but you can also set it vertically. Bring that up a bit, and also the classic arc shape here. And on top of that, each one of these 3 shapes has 3 different sizes. So I can go vertically here and make it small. Now, of course, the problem with that is in Pro Tools, you're forced to have this frame around it. So it's a complete kind of waste because you've got all this dead real estate. But on some other platforms, that may not be an issue. And then you can have large, which is where we were, and you can have extra large, which is a really big fella. And that's obviously too big for a situation like this. But if you've got an external monitor, for instance, where you might keep some of your plugins on permanently, as I do, you can turn off this little target here in Pro Tools, and other systems have got other ways of doing it. Drag this over to your other screen and leave it permanently stationed there. So that can be very handy. Let's move to the arc. Now here's the very large version of the arc one. So same situation, drag it off to a different screen, very large version of the horizontal setting. Now generally I prefer to just have it on large and horizontal, but that's my preference. Your mileage may vary. Now this next control over here refers to the reference level. Now this is only of use if your system is calibrated. Now I must admit mine's generally not. I mean, I'm working in the box 99% of the time. I mean, sure, I interface analog preamps when I'm recording and things like that, but I'm not running a fully calibrated system here, and I suspect the majority of you watching this probably aren't either. But if you are, this will configure the meter depending on the calibration of your studio, where 0 VU equals plus 4 dBu, and that either is going to be at -14, -18 or -20 in this situation here. And if I click on those now, you'll see some of the scalings change, but the actual performance of anything happening here is not going to change. So, I mean, 0 is still 0, of course, in this meter, so I can jump around there. But the scalings and the markings are changing. Just for reference purposes, -20 is the AES option, -18 is the EBU standard, and the -14 is often used in post-production and occasionally in mastering. But again, I wouldn't worry yourselves too much about this unless your system is fully calibrated and you need 100% accuracy against that. I'll switch that back to 20. Now over here, this delay field here is only relevant in certain host applications that have an I/O condition, and what happens is the metering actually occurs sometimes before you hear the audio. Now, this is not an issue here in Pro Tools, but apparently SoundForge, Wavelab and Logic may have a situation with this issue. So if you're operating on one of those platforms, that's something you're going to need to look into. And it could be easily tested by generating a short sine tone or a drum sound or something like that that's very quick and sudden. And you'd be able to very easily see if your metering's accurate or not in terms of timing. If a fix needs to occur, you can delay the meters all the way from 0 samples up to 50,000 samples. So you can compensate for the issue there. And just over here, this yellow hyphen sign is actually a collapse mode. And if screen real estate is an issue for you, you can close that down and get rid of the controls at the bottom. So as you see, you can make quite a large meter again and position that on an external monitor and not have to deal with this. So if you've got your settings just the way you want them, that's a good way to go. So let's go back to large, and now we'll talk about these controls at the bottom. So there's 3 basic sections here, the peak section, the overs section, and the meter mode section. So 3 controls, 2 controls, 3 controls. So let's look at the peak section first. So as you can see by default, the peaks are just jumping around and resetting themselves very quickly. Now we can set a peak hold condition. If we set it to auto, it'll remember those peaks, and every few seconds they'll reset. So if I stop now, you'll see 2 or 3 seconds, that'll reset itself. So that's that. If we choose hold instead, the peak hold will be permanent. And now when I stop, that'll just never go away. Now this is great in a situation where you might leave the room or whatever, you'll come back, you want a bit of a history of what's gone on. So that'll tell you what your highest peak was over a sustained period and be totally persistent. And you can reset that by just hitting reset here. So by the same token, you could be in auto mode and you could still manually reset on the fly as much as you want. So that's the peaks. Now the overs are very cleverly dealt with here. First of all, there's an over light over here, which will come on as a kind of a persistent thing of just saying there's an over and it's a permanent LED that's going to get in your face so you know it's there. So for example, I'll just push the volume up on this just from the control surface. So I'm turning it up now and boom, this over light's kicked in. So that's a permanent warning, but cooler than that, there's actually an over mode. So if I say display overs, so just quickly to define an over, we're talking about 3 or more consecutive samples exceeding 0 dB full scale. So if there's a single sample or 2 samples over, that's not going to be technically called an over in this case. You need 3 consecutive samples. So what this display is now saying is on the left-hand side, we've had 1 incidence of an over, that being 3 or more consecutive samples. So watch what happens if I leave it in this mode and I drive the program too hot into it. There I go. It's now counting overs on both left and right independently. I'll turn it down. So now, if I'd walked away and I come back to it now, I can see I've got 12 overs on the right, I've got 9 overs on the left. So the meter kind of doubles up and is now a basic counting scale. So very clever use of that. I can also reset them from here. And the green is now telling me that we're cool. So back again. So they go to red to show there's a problem on this side here, and now they're counting. And of course, once you get to negative 38, well, you've got a big problem. So if you walk away and come back and find your meters looking like that, I'd be reprinting your program if I were you. So that's the over selection. Now we've got the meter mode. Now I'll just get rid of that. And we're back to conventional levels, and that's what our meters are showing. I will turn that level back down from the control surface here. Oh, and you can clear this over here just by clicking on that. So now we're back to a safe stage. So yep, we're showing a normal meter as we've discussed. If I click on the phase button, now the meters change over to a different mode to show phase. So you can see what's happening here. We're moving to the right of this scale, left and right together. When I stop, we go back to the center very slowly. So in other words, it's a basic phase meter. That's the unity point. And if we start verging towards the right, that means things are predominantly in phase, and vice versa to the left, things are predominantly out of phase. So playing this now, as we saw, everything's cool. Off to the right. What I will do is insert a little plugin up here that allows me to alter the phase. So I'll just say a multi-mono, just a EQ 1 band here, let's say. I'll unlink those together. So now, while that's playing, and as you can see that's gone off to the right, I'll flip the phase on one side, or flip the polarity on one side as the more correct term, and off it goes. And over here you see this phase light come on as well. So just like the over LED here, this is just like a little thing that pops on in the background and gives you a little warning that there might be a phase issue. So every time I mess around without a phase, that will come on after a few seconds. There we go, bang. So that's handy. Let's put the polarity back. In fact, I'll just bypass that so nothing happens. Now that's the phase. If I move to the sum and difference, a sum and difference meter is showing you the center information versus the side information, kind of like an MS type situation. So this being a generally phase coherent track, if I play now, we can see the left-hand side is the louder one because that's showing the sum, and the bottom one here is showing the difference. So again, if I was to reverse the polarity on one side, these guys will basically swap around. There we go. And back again. And finally, back to standard left-right mode, which is where we started from. So that's an overview of the Dorrough meters, but the fun doesn't stop there. Also included in this package is a complete set of surround meters as well. Now I've got a surround track here, And this is actually a surround track from a Hollywood DVD. So I'm going to open up these meters now. So as you can see now, it's an expanded version of what we're used to. Now I won't go over the same controls we've dealt with, but I'll show you what's new here. First of all, there's the all-important order in which you display your tracks. Now it's defaulted to this DTS standard, as they've called it here, which is left and right first, then left surround, right surround, then center, and then LFE. Now personally, I'm a fan of this one they've called film. The ITU one, just quickly as I go past, is LR, center, LFE, LSRS. I prefer the film, which is your left, center, right up front, then left surround, right surround, and LFE. Now all those same viewing options apply here. We can go horizontally as well, and we can bring up the big arcs as well here. Now, if I have one complaint about this plugin, it's primarily with these two views here. It's bolted together as if it's just 3 stereo sets tied together. Now, I imagine that's been done because it's emulating hardware, and it's like having 3 separate hardware sets bolted together. I would have preferred if these were a little bit less discrete, maybe without the silver things in here, so it's one single meter, and you could see left, center, right, left surround, right surround, LFE. But that's a minor complaint. I mean, the thing works exactly the same. So let's have a look at it now. In this movie here, I've actually got 2 sections. Here's a section here where all channels are kind of roaring and going for it. And then here's a standard kind of movie dialogue type thing where just the center channel's going and there's little kind of ambiences in the other channels, but nothing significant. So I'll jump into the loud section here and you can have a look how this behaves. So as you can see, most of the action's still happening in the center, as would happen in a standard film, but the other channels are also working hard. If I go to the dialogue section here, because of the fast peak response here, even as though these other channels are virtually doing almost nothing, they're jumping around like crazy here. So as you can see, you're still seeing all the action in those other channels, which makes it very, very useful. So there's your left surround and right surround, which are just showing little peaks down there. But again, most of the work is being done by the dialogue track in the center there. Now, a couple of extra really useful functions on the surround version. This phase sum difference button here. Now look at the action that happens when I hit this fella. We go to this whole new section. Now what this is giving us is 2 separate sum and difference meters and 2 separate phase meters. And these guys are totally configurable by us. So in the default situation, this sum and difference meter is showing left against right, and so is the phase meter. And over here, we're seeing left surround versus right surround in both. Now they're the defaults because they're kind of being treated like little stereo sets. So we need to look at the differences between those, but there's other choices as well, but I'll just stick with these for now. Now I'm going to drop into the loud section here where everything's going for it, and let's have a look what happens. So over here we're seeing left versus right, and there's our phase meter and it's pushed up above the center. So that's showing us that we've got good phase cohesion there, and same on this side, which is great. To go the other way, I've got an EQ there on different channels. So I'll just open up this EQ at the same time and I'll unbypass that. I'll unlink it. So now I'm looking at just the left-hand side's EQ, just the left channel. I'm going to flip the polarity on one of those and we'll be able to see, therefore, the left-right of this meter reflect that. So I'm playing again and the phase will kick in and there it is behaving itself. If I flip the phase on this, polarity, sorry, caught myself out, boom, it takes a few seconds, and now that's showing me immediately there's a problem there. Now in 5.1 configurations, sometimes these problems are not so easy to spot, especially on things like left surround, right surround. All your attention might be focused on what's going on in the main speakers, and there could be some real dramas happening in the rears. So it's fantastic to be able to have that, and have this fella here jump out in your face and let you know that things may not be quite right. Now in terms of the other choices, let's have a look at this pop down here. So it's defaulted to left versus right, but we can also have left and right versus center to make sure that the polarity of the system is in. And we've got the left surround versus right surround, which we've got selected over there. And we've got left surround and right surround versus center. So for instance, if I choose left and right versus center, that's for this meter. So the other 3 are going to remain as is. Now we're going to see that the left-hand side is going to go pretty hot now because it's getting a summed version of left and right into the 1 meter. So if I actually choose a loud section, say right over here where it gets a bit nasty, that'll probably hit 0, yeah. So that's going off into 0, which is fine. It's not an overload as such. It's just summing together the power of left and right. But we can see here that the phase is still kind of correlated above the center. So we know we're in a good place with that. On this meter, the phase meter, there's even more choices. So you get to even compare the phase of, the center channel versus the LFE, depending on what the program is, and a left total versus right total down there, and right versus right surround, left versus left surround. So you can really kind of check the whole system out. So I'll take left versus left surround on there, and let's have a look at that. And off we go. So we know we're in good shape, and we should be because it's coming straight off a soundtrack we were putting onto a DVD here, so chances are it's in good shape. But if you're the actual place putting the stuff together, it's good to be able to keep an eye on all this and make sure things are going the right way. So that's the sum and difference mode, which is very handy back there. And again, the same collapse mode here that we have on the stereo version is available too. So you can tuck these away on a different monitor and just keep them on for your entire project to keep an eye on things. So that's the Dorrough meters. That's the last plugin, as I said, in this bundle. And next up, we're going to have a look at some real life mastering using these plugins on a few varied tracks. So let's see how we go with that, and I'll see you there.